Hi, so today we are going to talk about the camera design for Diwal'Oween. Thanks for your support, and especially thanks to our 40,000 Facebook fans, because you guys came on even before we shot this movie when we just had a graphic designer, and it inspired me to apply to festivals based on where you live. Like Indonesia was a big audience for us, and Indianapolis. So thanks to you, we kept this project going. And basically, overall, it was a comedy. So in terms of lighting and camera setups, I was always taught that the camera should be motivated by the actors and the feelings. So the camera should not draw too much attention to itself and be too flashy, and then the story doesn't work and the actors are really bad or something. Everything should be about the actors, the mood, the story, and everything should serve the story, as they say. So for this project, it was a sitcom style. I'd been directing at the ABC Disney Showcase, and then I had this script which had a lot of children in it. So I was like, oh, this would be a great work sample for directing television. And I needed something new to submit for the fellowships and for jobs and stuff like that. So from the ABC Disney Showcase, one of the actors was a producer at Aquafina's show, and they had a actor cancel and happened to get Lily Singh, and they had a director cancel, and she asked me to come in. So it was a last minute thing. The script was ready. I got it, I think 2 days before. I did a shot list for interviews, sketch, and man on the street type of things. And I submitted the shot list and general plan a day before. The producer approved it, and then we went in and shot. And we only had 3 hours with Lily Singh, so we did multicam. That was the style of the show anyway. It was called Aquafina's Talk, and we had a sheep who was only available. Dolly the sheep was only available for half an hour according to the animal rights laws. So we had to get the whole sketch done, and especially Dolly's shots, very quickly. So I thought, okay, we did all of this in just 3 hours. I can shoot this very long script I have as a web series or a pilot or something. Sometimes it's a feature, sometimes it's a short, depends on the festival, but I can shoot it very quickly. And we had a lot of children, so we were gonna have a lot of half days. So that was another consideration. So I thought we'll shoot with 2 or 3 cameras and really knock it out of the park and get everything we want. So first, I went to Columbia Film School in the MFA program, and I also took some intro classes at NYU in college. And so I had a good idea, and also photography classes, and I studied art and stuff. So I have like a pretty strong visual interest, and I'm a stickler for composition, and I really like the emotional effects that you get from different camera setups. So it's always going to be something different. You have to have the confidence to have a first plan at least, and then from there you can always adapt it on set once you have everyone going. And I get ideas all the time on set, like, oh, we could consolidate all this into one shot, or oh, we can get the fall leaves on the street and then come up to the kids. Like, that was on the spot. That was inspired by a Martin Scorsese shot where he said film is dead and nobody uses the camera anymore. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to do this in a sitcom way, watching Fresh Off the Boat and Blackish and all their Halloween specials, but I'm also going to try to, do some surprise things that they can't do because they're stuck in a particular format. So their show looks consistent all the time. So we took some chances also and had fun on the spot. And so I was always trained that the camera should follow the emotion. And in terms of the process, so I broke down the script emotionally. I thought of what are the emotions and how can the camera convey this with the actors. And so I put together a shot list for the entire project. It took me about a week, not all day long, but a couple of hours every day. And that was my first draft of a shot list. And the other thing was that I watched a lot of comparable sitcoms or comedies shot in New York. Like Kelsey Grammer's show is another one. I watched some Woody Allen typical New York comedies, although Woody Allen is canceled, but we're gonna look at his art. And then other popular comedies that are out at the time. And then I also could use those to communicate with my crew that this is the look I'm going for, this is a comparable thing, watching the videos for each scene. And a big part of your job as a director is to communicate. So I have this in my head. No, you have to get it on a paper. You have to put it on your computer. And there are a lot of tools nowadays. So when I was learning, we used to do a hand-drawn overhead shot of where you put the cameras, where you're planning to put the cameras, where you're planning to put the lights. So when I was starting out, we were taught to do an overhead, and I love doing overheads. I've even done it on features where I was an assistant director. You draw the camera, you draw the actors, where they're gonna move, you figure it all out ahead of time. It's like a game plan for a sports team or something. And then from there, your gaffer can say, oh, okay, so we'll put this particular light, we'll need this type of equipment, however you want to do it. And when you're going to look at locations, you can say, well, I want to do this particular type of a long take. Can we do it here in this location? Will it work? Is it big enough? Or if it's a smaller location, how can we achieve the same effect? So it's good for you to have your own first draft of the shot list, because you're directing this in the same way that you would have the first draft of the script or the first cut of the edit, and it can always be modified. So that's the main thing. Everything is constantly moving in this business. Then I did a storyboard, and these days, there are a lot of apps for all these things. There's Shot Designer Pro, which I love. You can design your own overhead and make everything move around. Otherwise, some people use PowerPoint, and you can even put emojis in there for different characters, or if you have an animal like Dolly the sheep, or we had a lot of dogs on set, then you can do that, add those emojis. So nowadays you can even adapt the formality of how it used to be depending on the job, or if it's your own project, you can make your shot list look cute or fun or whatever you want. And tonally, I knew this is a lowbrow comedy for children. Like, some of the jokes are very silly. It's not going to be a horror, murder, everyone's getting their throats slashed type of Halloween. It's like a cute wearing costumes type of Halloween, and a little spooky or weird, but nothing too crazy, It's gonna play at the library, it's gonna play in a school, it's gonna play at a community center or something like that, or at home, with the babysitter. It's not gonna be like a teenagers having a sleepover worrying about a serial killer type of a vibe, and it's not something that's going to can either. Like, I was pretty much using typical sitcom type of setups, mediums, reaction shots, so the actors can do funny reactions or play off of each other. And a lot of comedy plays well in wides because there are two characters and the situation of it is what's funny. And otherwise they're 3/4 shots, which are funny looking shots. But because I have this training with a cinematic background, I wanted to incorporate also for this particular scene, okay, he was introduced as a nice guy and a romantic guy, but now we have to convince the audience that he may be a weirdo and maybe he's doing something that's really bad, and that's going to set up the whole second act. So this scene in the overall arc is the inciting incident for Manveer and Swan's storyline B. So the A story is Mithu Chalana's character Ninu trying to set up the perfect Diwali for the parents to meet, and then everything goes wrong. And then the B story is Manveer and Swan, Happy and Bobby, and Manveer becomes suspicious of Bobby, and it launches the second act where Bobby gets into trouble instead of having the family celebration. When you're writing for television, you have an A story, B story, C story. So this was the B story inciting incident. So it was important. Every scene is important, but this was especially important. And in the first version, we only had an hour to get from one location to another, and we shot this with one camera in the van going between the locations because we were on a low budget anyway, so we had to make it work. But it didn't really work. It was kind of still funny, the performances were good, but there were a lot of continuity problems. Like you would see in this shot there's a bus, but then when you cut to the guy's close-up, there's nothing behind him. Where did the bus suddenly go? You know, or the back had the same truck all the time, but then when you get into the guy's close-up, the truck isn't there because it's actually 10 minutes later in the shooting time. So I was in the trunk. You could see the edge of my winter coat. So these days people notice everything, and it wasn't in a cute way like M. Night or Hitchcock, like, oh, I'm doing a cameo, I'm playing the sheriff in my own movie or something, you know. It was like a mistake, and people would come up to me after screenings, like other filmmakers, like, oh, I saw your coat in the back, ha ha ha, you know. And so first I looked into cleaning it up in post, but it was really expensive. Like, they have those t-shirts, just fix it in post, don't fix it in post. Like, do the planning and make the time for it if you can. And it was just cheaper to go back and reshoot the whole thing. And then the crew had the opportunity. I did a tech day 3 days ahead, so we only had camera and lights. There were no actors, there was no production. Like, there were a couple of PAs and the producer came, but it was pretty low key, and it was in the parking lot, so we had the route of the location and the holding, and then we had extra time to figure out all the equipment, and if anything wasn't working, we had a bumper day to go back and fix the rental or get something else or return it. And we also got lenses. Owen had the idea of using lens rentals, which they mail you the lenses, so we had to do planning a couple weeks ahead to order all the stuff anyway. So first there was the shot list, which I looked at Key and Peele and High Anxiety, and High Anxiety was Mel Brooks doing Hitchcock in a comedy way. So that was kind of what we were going for, where the performance was creepy and funny, but the lighting was spooky and leaning in the direction of horror thriller. So the audience is suspicious of the guy by the end of it. And the lighting served the story, but how are we going to shoot in a car without much of a budget? And then it was important for me also to get the permits, because I didn't want to be pulled over by the police and waste 2 hours or something, or not be able to shoot. So that extra afternoon of going to Union City, we shot outside of Lincoln Tunnel. If you know, there are all those overhead passes, so it creates a lot of darkness. And then we had to time the lines also, so that we hit those darkness at the right spot, and then everything cut and it was darkness. So those were some of the decisions. And then we converted the shot list into a 3-camera setup, and then we had monitors, and I was in the back with the sound guy, and we had lavaliers and a boom. And then the lighting was between Swan's legs, and we had some other smaller lights also near the front to light Manbir. So those were some of the considerations for Diwal'Oween and this particular shoot. And also then working as a woman director, you know, you have to be confident, you have to be commanding, and you're leading the crew. So even if you have doubts in your mind, like one day, the very first shot, the very first day, one of the actors was cast last minute, so he didn't particularly know his lines. So to get the performance, we ended up doing like 12 takes, because we were basically doing the rehearsal on camera and modifying it. So and also he was still learning his lines, so that was another thing. It wasn't his fault, it was just the situation and the scenario. And the performance, you know, was more of a theater actor, so it had to be toned down, etc. And people are very sensitive about all these things because the actor and the character are gay, so, you know, people have different perspectives on media. So the crew didn't understand why I was doing 12 takes, so I had to explain to them, you know, they're like, we're ready and we got the shot, and I would have cut three takes ago. You know, it's like, no, and you're the one who's gonna have to live with it. You're the one who's gonna spend the next few years going to festivals or meeting buyers and having every little thing critiqued, you know, and it's do or die, make it or break it. So you have to be happy, and you can't waste the whole day. I mean, we're still on schedule, but you know, you have to get what you have to get, and you have to sometimes fight for it. And also you want someone who's collaborative. Like as a woman director, Jane Campion famously whispers on set. She says, one of the great directors of our time, you know, but sometimes in America you have to be loud and boisterous and bossy, and you just have to own it. So whatever insecurity and fear you have the night before of messing up and doing a mistake, you have to just get over it and like make your movie, be confident, be in charge, fight for your shots if you have to, in a polite way maybe. And that was one thing about Owen. He's very collaborative, and he has a way of saying like, can I make a suggestion, you know, can we try this? And then you can say, okay, let's try it your way, let's try it my way. Or if you are in the, and also everything changes. You can have a plan on paper, but suddenly the child legal coordinator for the state is giving you half an hour or cuts your day short because somebody didn't report before leaving or something, and now they're at a birthday party and they don't want to come back and report to her. You know, we had that problem one day. So there are things out of your control. Or you're on set and you get inspired and you want to modify a shot into a one take, or you wrote it as a one take, and you know, if the camera guy just does it once more, he hit all the marks, now he's gonna get it. You know, you have to encourage people also. So there are different, even sometimes they're insecure or they're not confident, so you have to give them the confidence, you know. Sometimes people also refuse to take direction, especially if you're a woman, and I hate to say it, guys, but some of you don't like to take direction. So sometimes I have like I've given someone the ultimatum, like, you know, I shot all my own stuff in film school other than my major projects. I know how to set up a stupid paper lantern, and, you know, I can set up 3 lights. It's not a big deal, dude. Like, either you do it or I do it. And then I have sarcastically applauded the person for taking direction. Like, congratulations, you learned how to take direction. So sometimes you have to do this, and sometimes you just have to fire the person and swap out. So, you know, those are different things. I also had to learn to deal with my own nerves, to be quite honest, and take charge of the group. Although I have been in a lot of leadership positions, the first day on set, again, you're like, whoa, I wrote this thing. I hired all these people over email. We did all these rehearsals, and now day one we have 50 people on set and they're all asking questions at the same time, and you have to, like, you know, give everyone confidence that you know what you're doing and you have a vision and stick to it also. And some days we had to cut a page of dialogue because we were running late. Some things I regret now, you know, we can go into that in a different time. And then in terms of my training, so I trained with Nick Preferis, who wrote the book that a lot of other schools use. So he taught us how to break down a scene, look at the turning point, do your camera design, which obviously is different for every single job you have and every single thing you shoot, because every single thing will have a different mood, hopefully, and a different tone and a different set of locations and actors. Nick Preferis was Elia Kazan's assistant camera person, and Elia Kazan was a legendary, one of the great directors of Hollywood, and he discovered Marlon Brando and Marilyn Monroe, and he shot on the waterfront in New Jersey in Hoboken when it was still shipyards in the 1950s. So Nick had a very classical Hollywood style of teaching us everything, and if you're a director, you know camera also, you know how to do a shot list, you know how to do all of this. But some interviews that I did with some DPs, they were like, that's my job. Well, if you're doing that, what am I gonna do? And I'm like, but I have to have a vision and an idea. So it's a collaboration. And if you think this, like, sometimes people come, they're theater directors and they don't know their way around the camera, you know? So maybe that's a better collaboration for you or something, or coming on board earlier into a project. So in hiring, you have, you know, and then, or, you know, next time hire this person, but earlier in the project so you can work on this stuff together is another way to think about it, you know? So you meet different types of personalities and different people collaborate in different ways. And for this particular one, we didn't have like 2 months of prep to pay a union person every single day. And I had already done a shot list that I'd been thinking about for a year and modifying. So it was not that type of a job, you know? And then being on set, like sticking to your tone is really important, sticking to the mood, the feeling, the emotion. And when you're on set, you're collaborating with a lot of people all the time. So, you know, you have to be like laser focused and know exactly what you want from each department, and hire people who are, in the case of comedy, funny, in the case of drama, dramatic, you know, or serious, or have a particular aesthetic that you want. And then in terms of my training, so Nick Preferis taught us like all this camera planning in a more technical way. And then Eric Mendelsohn would go in and sort of micro-analyze, like, oh, you need to work on POVs. Go copy Rosemary's Baby Scrabble scene or something like that. Find a scene with a lot of POVs and just copy it, you know, and then I could tell the difference between a POV and an over the shoulder and that type of thing. And then Tom Kalin, we learned one takes and subjective versus objective. So I put that into this scene because in some shots we're subjectively looking from Manvir's perspective, and from some shots it's just objective. So subjective is like I'm sitting here and my perspective is looking at the laptop and looking at you on Zoom. Objective is like there's a serial killer behind this door and there's a camera behind the door, and the serial killer is just looking and listening through the cracks, and I don't know, the actor doesn't know that that other actor is there. So that was something we learned. And then Peter Solette kind of brought everything together into our final projects. And then we had different teachers for directing actors and different teachers for directing camera or overall direction, because acting is a different skill and you work with them in a particular way, but ultimately you're trying to convey emotions and feelings. So I think that's all. And thanks for all your engagement also. Still so many years later, we have people commenting and liking on Facebook and Instagram. And you can follow us there. If you're not part of the team yet, you can still join us. All right, bye.